All right, Raider Nation, let's talk about quarterbacks because it has come to my attention that the three top quarterbacks on the Raiders draft board right now, and this is in line of who they like the most, is number one, Shedeur Sanders. This isn't something new. We've known this for quite some time, that he was probably the number one pick for the Raiders, even back, with Tom Telesco, even though him and Mark Davis apparently were in disagreement about this. He wanted Cam Ward over Shedeur. But either way, the draft board for the Raiders, who they are looking at right now, is Shedeur Sanders number one, Cam Ward number two, and Jackson Dart number three. Now, this is interesting because we've made videos about Jackson Dart, and a lot of other people have made videos about Jackson Dart to the Raiders and why that would make sense and what the risks of taking Jackson Dart would be. But nobody knew for sure if the Raiders felt the same way. Well, now we do. According to insider sources, the Raiders are actually pretty high on Jackson Dart and could perceivably draft him in the first round, because it is quite likely that New York is going to take Shedeur Sanders. It is quite likely that Cam Ward will also be off the table before pick number 6, which means that the Raiders have a choice to make. And that choice is, do you go best player available, or do you feel a gaping need that the Raiders have? And that is the quarterback situation, because you cannot roll into 2025 with Gardner Minshew and Aidan O'Connell as your quarterbacks. It's just not a winning formula. Now, I do believe that Aidan O'Connell still is yet to see exactly what he is and what he isn't. I think one season under his belt where he is the guaranteed starter will really tell you a lot as to whether or not this dude is going to have what it takes to be a quarterback in the NFL. However, you can't take the risk of you give him a year and then he's not the guy. And now you've blown yet another year to build up this team, and you have superstars like Max Crosby who are starting to get a little irritated at the lack of production by this team. So Jackson Dart feels a very real need. Jackson Dart is superior athletically to Aidan O'Connell. He is a better arm talent than Gardner Minshew. I would say arm talent-wise, he's probably fairly similar to Aidan O'Connell, maybe a higher upside. And if you draft Jackson Dart, the Raiders are saying that this is the franchise quarterback. But if you do it at pick number 6, is that a reach? Because would anybody else draft him in the first round? I think it's plausible that the Raiders would trade back to pick number 8, 9, or 10 and pick up a haul for that number 6 overall draft pick for a team that's desperate for a guy that's on the board, not named Jackson Dart. And then you could go and get Jackson Dart at a later round, and you've picked up another second-round draft pick and probably a second-round draft pick for next year. Maybe even a third-round draft pick thrown in the mix for that trade. And now you get to fill an awful lot of holes that this team has. And you still get to go and draft a great offensive lineman in the second round. You still get to draft a stud running back in the second round, because you'll have 2 second-round picks. And you'll still have 2 third-round draft picks that because of the fact that we traded Davante Adams. And so you could go and get another stud player in the third round, maybe a wide receiver, maybe another guard, maybe both, since you have 2 third-round picks. And then your 4th through 7th round picks, you're really filling depth needs there. Maybe you find a diamond in the rough. That would be really cool. So for me, now that I see that the Raiders really have serious interest in Jackson Dart, that he is number 3 quarterback on their draft board, and it is quite likely that he'll be the only quarterback left at pick number 6, that the Raiders could make a move at Jackson Dart. The question really comes down to this, Raider Nation. If you draft Jackson Dart and you sit him for a year, because I honestly don't believe Jackson Dart is day one ready for the NFL, then do you start Aiden O'Connell? And if you start Aiden O'Connell, what happens if that dude does a Sam Darnold and takes you to the playoffs? And now he being, finishing up his third year, he'll only have 1 year left on his contract. And now you got to make a real serious decision. Who is your guy? And so this is kind of why I was so upset last year that we brought in a bridge quarterback by the name of Gardner Minshew instead of giving Aiden O'Connell the full season. Because if you start Aiden O'Connell from the full season, you know what you got with him by at least week 6 or 7. You know whether or not he's going to really be able to start. If he's improving week after week after week, you keep playing him for the entire season. And then you know what you know and what you don't know about Aiden O'Connell. But right now, the only thing that we know is what we don't know at all about Aiden O'Connell, if that makes any sense. We don't know if Aiden O'Connell can cut it as a franchise quarterback. We don't know if Aiden O'Connell is going to still be on this team a year from now. We do know that Gardner Minshew is not going to be on the team because that just makes absolutely no sense to pay that dude that much money to sit on the bench and be a backup quarterback when you have Aiden O'Connell. He can be the backup quarterback. And so it really, the Raiders are in kind of a crappy situation because Antonio Pierce let himself get bullied by Tom Telesco and Mark Davis. Because he was an interim or a first-year head coach, he let himself get bullied into going with Gardner Minshew when he clearly said that was a mistake. And moving forward, he would absolutely have much more to say about who the quarterback is going to be. And I think we all knew that meant Aiden O'Connell was going to be the starter. They promptly fire him the next day after he has that press conference. So now we're back in this situation of, are we going to go spend $35-40 million a year on Sam Darnold? Are we going to draft a quarterback like Jackson Dart high in the first round when the consensus is, at best, he is a second-round quarterback? Are we not going to give Aiden O'Connell another shot and not know what he does? Or are we going to give him the shot and then he has a Sam Darnold resurgence to his play in his career, and all of a sudden, now we have the same problem where we just drafted a quarterback and now we have a Sam Darnold effect like the Vikings, who have to make a very serious decision. Do you go with the rookie, J.J. McCarthy, who is unproven, or do you go with the guy who got you to the playoffs in Sam Darnold and hope that he can have an even better year and get you to the Super Bowl? That's the situation that the Raiders are in. Drop your comments down below. Let me know how you feel about the Raiders having Jackson Dart as the number 3 quarterback on their draft board.